Well, I mean, it's interesting. I had a good look last night at the start of the season, and with Marsh in charge, and they were only losing by the odd goal with him. They actually started the season quite well. I think they got 7 points from the first 9 available. And you thought, okay, maybe this, after keeping them up last year, he was the right appointment. And I think really they held on to him just a little bit too long. The form never really improved. The number of goals that they started to concede was becoming really embarrassing. And when you go into the last game of the season, you have all those plans in place. But when you concede a goal in 2 minutes, it's just so deflating. 2 minutes into the first half, they're a goal down, and the defending is really awful.
Shocking.
It's really awful.
78 goals they conceded, Martin. Can you imagine conceding 78 goals in a season?
No, and I look at the Aronson and Adams and Rocco and Sinistera, McElhenney. I mean, all Rutter, good players, but no one really putting a performance together, and they never seem to have any real composure in front of goal.
But we don't know whether Rudiger is a good player or not because they never played him.
Well, no, only in the FA Cup. But we didn't see very much of him at all. So, lots of expenditure. It's a shame because it's a huge football club. It's going to be difficult to get back into that top level. It's never easy, I can tell you. A lot of discontent there yesterday. I'm really sad to see that football club, after so long away from it, back in there for 3 years, go back out again.
Fans were completely angry last night. The atmosphere was hostile at Ellen Road yesterday. There's some good people in that Boardroom. Paul Bell, Angus Kinnear.
Yep.
But did they put too much trust in their former sporting director, Victor Orta?
Yes, to some extent, but they put too much trust in a variety of different places. If you've got an ownership model that's pulling one way and another one, you've got two people in the boardroom. You've got the owner that's selling the football club on the basis if it stays in the Premier League, and you've got the new owner sitting and waiting in the wings with a different viewpoint on things. That's why you've got people alleging that players were going to be sold by one part of the ownership model, with another part of the ownership model not wanting them to be sold. You've also got influence. The RB model is great if you're playing in Austrian and German leagues that are not as competitive as the Premier League. It's not the same model that happens in the Premier League. So to lift Jesse Marsch and to drop him in to exercise the spirit of Marcelo Bielsa was a mistake. To stay with him longer than they should have done was a mistake. To not have any availability around, then start pinning tails on donkeys because they couldn't find anybody, and Javier Gracia came in to fill a gap for a period of time.
Were you surprised by that appointment?
Well, I wasn't, because there wasn't anything around. There were two or three football clubs looking for managers at that time, and they were having difficulty finding them. They can't find any candidates to come forward. Southampton were in the same space. Hence, they ended up with Ruben Selles because they couldn't find anybody to take the job over. And I think there was an element of that going on at Leeds to some extent, which is unbelievable when you think it's a Premier League job, but notwithstanding it, it was the case.
Did they wait too long?
Because you Sean Dyche was available, didn't you?
Well, I thought he did okay. I thought we did okay for the first 3 or 4 games, and I thought he was half sensible. And then, of course, what happened was, no one can understand this, they are battering Crystal Palace in the first half.
That's mad.
Battering Crystal Palace. Palace scored before half-time, and the second half, Leeds just absolutely evaporated.
Collapsed.
And from that point
5-1,
on, they lose 5, they lose 6, they lose 4, and it becomes the staple diet that he can't seem to unwind from.
But their defenders were shocking, weren't they?
Well, they are, but if you look at Leeds' decision-making, they never replaced Calvin Phillips. They never replaced an offensive option in Rafinha. Patrick Bamford, I thought at times this season, was diabolical. Poor, not just penalty misses, but in games where he didn't hold the line up, he didn't do his job. I don't know whether new contracts have affected his outcome because he got a new contract, but he was back to the Patrick Bamford that was a jobbing centre forward that went around to Palace and other football clubs because he couldn't get a proper gig, rather than a Patrick Bamford a couple of years ago that was scoring a lot of goals for them. But all of that is diminishes against the reality of the decision-making processes. What's the point of bringing Sam in to give him this unpalatable amount of money, whether it's 500 grand for 4 games or £3 million for staying up, and give him 4 games, of which 2 of them were against Newcastle and Man City?
Never going to work, was it?
He needed 6 or 8 games to have an effect.
Okay.
So it's a silly set of decisions. They were 2 years ago, unbelievably, Leeds, once upon a time dirty Leeds from the 70s, were everybody's second favourite side because of the brand of football. And they've gone to the situation now where
if you're on the board now, if you're on the board,
victory.
Simon, if you're on the board now, do you keep Sam Allardyce?
Well, that's a good question. Should we ask Sam Allardyce, because he's been talking about his future. He spoke to us last night about that. A new owner is going to be in place by June the 14th when the transfer window opens for the Championship. But is Big Sam going to be in charge?
I think if I'm going to do anything, it's going to be here. But like I said, those discussions will have to happen in the next few days. We'll have to have probably a sit down for a couple of days and thrash it out. Probably the right word for both sides to be comfortable. Overall, you need to sit down and look and discuss the whole infrastructure of the club and how you can take what you've got and build on it that'll have to be in the Championship now. I can tell them what I think needs to be done, and then they can say what they think or how they think.
He sounds like a guy who has got a plan for Leeds in his head if they do give him the chance to stay. Should they?
Good. Well, I think not, actually. I don't think I've seen enough of change in those games, in those 4 games, albeit very difficult because you come in so last minute. I haven't seen anything that's made me think, okay.
They were good against Newcastle, Mark.
Did okay against Newcastle. But that's the game, really. That's a home match that you expected. I thought the first half against Man City just weren't even in the game. I know it ended up 2-1 in the match, and they maybe did better in the second half. I think maybe it's one thing that we'll never know. He didn't stay on at West Bromwich Albion. We went in there to do a sort of caretaker job. He down tools. There's this feeling that he wants to. I can sense in his voice he wants to carry on. I'm not sure they're going to give him that opportunity. I do think it wouldn't be the end of the world if he stayed there. He's now put obviously 2 or 3 weeks work in. He's assessed the club. At least he'll be giving his pennyworth to the board. And then it'd be their call to whether they keep him or not. But I don't know whether or not he's really got that ambition to be in the Championship.
This is one incarnation where he didn't have Sammy Lee alongside him because Sammy Lee wasn't available. Now, I don't think...
It's on jury service.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. And a few of those players should be had up for certain things.
Criminal, wasn't it?
Shouldn't they? I look at myself and say, if you've got Sam Allardyce from a few years ago, maybe. I am a huge admirer of Sam. I like him personally. And I like him professionally. I'm not entirely sure that I liked his particular little soliloquy walking in the door. Maybe he wanted to create an impression in the dressing room. I think was Martin was suggesting to me a few weeks ago about letting people know that he was here by making the statements that he made about who he is and what he is and where his credentials are. He's managed West. If you get the Sam Allardyce that managed West Ham 10 years ago out of the Championship, or however long it was, into the Premier League.
Everton as well.
And Everton as well, then fine. But the reason why I say the Sam Allardyce that managed West Ham is because Sam is got an attitude about where he thinks he should be in the food chain. And if he goes
but not anymore.
No, more so now.
Do you think so?
More so now. Absolutely more so. He resists the notion that he's Fireman Sam. He doesn't like it. He makes a point about where he thinks he should be. He doesn't think he should be managing the Championship. He should manage him in the Premier League. Now, that's no problem.
Not at 68 years of age,
that's
doesn't
not
think that.
But that's not...
Surely.
Yeah, I think Sam's worse than he's ever been. I think Sam buys into the mentality that he's Big Sam. I think he's ultimately... I said it the other day on a show with him. I said to him, if someone asked me, would I employ Sam? I said, I have difficulty employing someone that actually refers to himself as Big Sam. I take that with a struggle. But if he goes down... Because I think it's ridiculous to refer yourself as a moniker. Come on. You become a caricature of yourself, don't you? But I think...
Don't you call yourself Smooth Simon outside?
No, I do not. I wasn't here. I waited to the last minute to come in the door because I knew how long I'd have to endure you for. But the point is this. If Sam is down in the Championship with the right mindset, he'll get Leeds United back up. So it depends what Leeds want. If they want to get out of this division in the first bounce, which can be achieved because Burnley have just done it, Leeds will go down with 50, 60 million pounds worth of parachute payments in their pocket. They'll unload some of the wage bill. They'll restructure their thinking. And there's no reason why this powerhouse of a football club won't bounce again.
Ownership's a bigger thing, though, isn't it? Because they've got 44% that belongs to the 49ers. That's going to change, apparently, by the time we get to the
this is the point.
Window.
I wrote an article about Leeds last week and say this actually might be a good thing. Often it's great
for the 49ers. They're going to get it cheap.
Often it's dark. It's most darkest before the dawn, isn't it? And in this instance, you need this clarity. You cannot have 2 different agendas in a boardroom, working in a different set of mindsets, making decisions that are not handled well or thought through cleverly. In this instance, they've now probably got clarity. The team's been running, so then you'll have one set of messages, one set of taskmasters, and one set of thinking going on. And if that will then streamline what their next decisions are. And if it is Allardyce, and I'm kind of half in the Martin camp that I don't think there's a necessity for it to be Allardyce.
He has got 29 years of managerial experience, hasn't he?
And that's fine, but everything runs its course, doesn't it? Just because you did something once.
It's whether or not he's got that ambition. Really, he's got.
That's the question.
He's got the skill set now to still go on.
Sounds like it, doesn't he? Sounds like it to me. I saw him. I went up there the other week actually to the Newcastle game, and I spoke to him afterwards, and he was shaking. He said he couldn't believe it. He said we spent all week doing this, and then they did that. He goes, I can't understand it. There was a mindset problem here. We've got to change that. And he sounded to me energized and enthused.
But that's what they do. And the fact of the matter is that Sam came in there with a 4-week job, and when you say or not at 68 years of age. I think Sam has actually changed the outlook that he had previously, which was someone that was moderately less than aware of his own presence, more inclined to be a football man rather than a little bit of a soundbite. And this nonsense that he trotted out before the game that at Man City about where he ranks on the food chain of managers in comparison with his knowledge of Pep Guardiola showed me a side of Sam that I didn't think was particularly appetising.
I think that was box office. He was trying
Yeah.
to. He was trying to let the players know, if you didn't know me before today, you're certainly going to know me tomorrow. Because, and what happened? Pep said, "Yeah, I agree with him. He's just as good as me."
He did actually.
Yeah, but Pep thinks everyone's lovely right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's been very friendly to everyone because he's beaten everyone.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.